Welcome to the newest episode of All Things LOCS, the show where we're discussing everything related to leadership, operations, culture, and strategies for growth for the independent private practice owner. Now, I'm going to start this episode with something that might sound a little controversial to you, which is if you're thinking about spending more on marketing, maybe it's Google Ads, maybe you're looking at hiring another, marketing agency or hiring a marketing agency for the first time ever or doing it in-house. You're thinking about doubling down on your physician outreach because you think you need more referrals. I want you to not to do any of that, at least for right now. I want you to take a pause. And it's not because marketing isn't a crucial aspect of building a business, but it's because you're spending money on marketing, you're getting patients to come in, but then you keep having to double down on more marketing efforts, which tells you marketing isn't actually your biggest problem. And for many of you out there, the biggest challenge is going to be not how do I get the patients in, but it's really how do I keep the patients? Because I can tell you right now, I've talked to numerous private practice owners. I've been in it myself, but I've also spoken to a lot of people who do healthcare marketing, and they tell me the exact same thing that I've seen and heard from people who are actually, doing the nitty gritty work, which is, you know what, I get these practices more patients, and then they keep coming back to me telling me I need more patients. So they're noticing the same trend, which is they're giving you the patients, but the clinic as a whole is not keeping them. And that's why today we're going to really be having a detailed conversation about not just the importance of patient retention, but what it's really costing you. And I can tell you from my own, experience, I love the marketing team that I work with, and I was always grateful for them. And I'm going to explain really why, not just how to really double down on the patients you're getting, how to keep your retention really high, but what it's really doing to your practice as a whole, how it's affecting your brand. Let's just get right into it because I'm really excited about this and I want you guys to be excited about it too. Now, when we talk about patient retention, essentially the patients that come into your practice, do you actually keep them? Now, whatever your treatment protocol is, and if you're a physical therapist, chiropractor, occupational therapist, maybe it's once a week, maybe it's 2 or 3 times a week for many weeks. If you're an orthopedic, maybe it's once a month. But not only are the patients coming back, because that is one aspect of retention, but do they actually come in as per your treatment plan? So if you're recommending twice a week, are they coming in twice a week? If you recommend 3 times a week, are they coming in maybe twice or once, right? Those visits add up. And at the end of the day, there's really 2 things that are being affected if your if your patient retention is not that great. Number one, from a pure standpoint of marketing, you're spending a lot of money and not actually recuperating it. So if I'm spending, $5,000 a month on my marketing efforts and I'm getting, maybe 20 patients a month out of it, and I expect to see those 20 patients, maybe 40 total visits, but then they only come in for 30 total visits or 25 total visits, how does that actually affect your bottom line? And then this is something that I think a lot of you actually forget. And I've talked to a lot of people with the mentality of just, well, if I lose patients, I got more coming in. So what's the problem? Especially for those of you that are in network. I'm not saying you don't care about the patients, but there are people who are in network where it's more of a volume game. So like, don't worry, I got more people coming in. So the second aspect is, how do you get an outcome with a patient if they're not coming into your prescription or if they're just not coming in, period? So if you went to school to help patients get better and they're not coming in per your recommendation, how the hell is that, how's that living up to your oath or your pledge as a clinician, right? I want to get patients better, but then I'm okay with them not coming in to the prescription I had to put out. And I've heard from numerous clinicians where patient stops coming in, they want to maybe start making, they start making excuses, some of them. Well, they were almost near discharge or they weren't that committed. Then why were you recommending them to begin with? Why were you keep telling them, hey, you got to come in? Is it just training, habit, no thought process? Ultimately, I want you guys to understand that marketing in healthcare, yes, 100% outcomes is the name of the game. But at the end of the day, too, you're spending a lot of money potentially on marketing. And if you're not spending money, because maybe you're saying, well, Dan, I don't really spend on Google ads. I don't have any, or Facebook ads. I don't even have a marketing company. I don't have even anybody in-house. It's all word of mouth and referrals. All right. What about the time it takes to build those relationships? right? It's not as if you go see a doctor and the doctor, you meet him once and it says, all right, cool, Dan, I'll start sending you all my patients. No, especially if you're in an area that's competitive. What the hell do you think everybody, the other private practices are doing? They're going to the same doctor saying, hey, doc, can you send your patients to me for physical therapy or for chiropractic care or for occupational therapy? You're maybe like 10th on the list, but then you just assume. So it's going to take a lot of repeated touches. And if I'm not mistaken, I think, what is it? You need to basically touch base with somebody about 7 or 8 times before they'll start actually being more aware of you and potentially sending you some work. So you're battling against human psychology. So if you're saying, well, I don't spend any money, no, but you're spending time. And what's that worth? Yeah, what's it worth for you to take time out of your clinic? And maybe if it's not you as the owner, maybe it's your clinical director or maybe, just one of your clinicians. All right, now they're not treating. So you're not generating any revenue and you're not getting any outcomes because they're not in the office because they're at a doctor's office. So if you're not concentrating on how do we keep the patients that we already have, I had a CEO and the guy had a phenomenal line that has obviously resonated with me, which is the gold is under your feet, meaning you already have the patients. What are you doing with them? And if you're just focused on how do we get the next patient, how do we get the next patient, and you're not focused on how do we keep the people that we already have. And I know, some of you might say, well, I do a hell of a job with the patient. I do an amazing exam, it's thorough. The whole patient experience throughout the evaluation is phenomenal. I get them compliant. Okay, then what happens towards the tail end of your treatment? Because this is where a lot of patients also fall off. And I remember reading a study, and I don't remember it. If I can find it, by all means, I'll put in the show notes. But I remember a study a few years back that said about 70% of patients, at least in physical therapy, drop off. They self-discharge, meaning they're not even going through a full treatment plan. And we're going to go over some reasons for this. So it's not always just a matter of, all right, I kept the patient. Initially, it's how do I keep them long term? Because that's also a big focus for a lot of clinicians. It's, all right, you have to get past visit 4. Visit 4 is a huge drop-off point for patients. So a lot of clinicians out there think, all right, I'm on visit 5 or 6, or I'm on week 3 or 4. They trust me now. Don't be deceived. Now, when I was practicing, I could tell you guys right now, I was always super grateful for the marketing team that I had in-house. And I know a lot of you out there don't have a marketing person potentially doing the work for you. Maybe you outsourced it. But if you have somebody in-house that's doing the marketing for you, now that looks obviously very different. It could be strictly social media. They could be doing physical outreach. That's not dead for a lot of you, right? Going to physicians or going to events, township events, senior events, things like that. I fortunately had that kind of person. If you do too, I want to say one thing to you. Consider yourself fortunate and honestly pretty lucky. And the second thing is be very grateful and thank them, right? There's one aspect of marketing that was honestly really frustrating for me, which is they do a lot of work to get patients in. And then the mentality of just, well, I need more people, You're basically shitting all over them. What are you actually paying somebody in marketing for if you're not going to do the work to keep the patients? Because I also just feel it's very insulting to them. And there's a reason that when I was in clinic, I fostered some of the best relationships with the marketing team because I didn't have to do really much of the marketing myself back, especially when I was younger and I was really just starting out in leadership as a clinical director. I was super introverted. I got along great with patients, pretty good with employees. You take me to a doctor's office, I was freaking terrible. I was just kind of awkward. It was all business, no personality. Didn't want to do it. And honestly, I didn't want to do it just because I was bad, but then I didn't want to do it because I knew I was bad. And I didn't actually want to hurt the relationship that we were trying to actually create with the potential doctor or whoever was in front of us at the moment. So I was always grateful to them, and I let them know, you're saving me from having to do something I really don't enjoy, and you're actually doing the hard part, which is giving me patience. So the least I can do is everything I possibly can to keep the patient, right? And again, if you have the mentality of, well, yeah, it seems common sense because I'm actually trying to get the outcomes, I want you guys to ask yourself, am I really fully invested in the patient outcomes? Or if your mentality is, if a patient drops off, oh, well, they weren't that motivated. They didn't want it. Or we got more people coming in. Or I'm already super busy. Not for nothing, bunch of bullshit. You have to start taking this stuff really You got to be very responsible. Yes, patients in an outpatient setting, they're not as motivated as I think we all thought they would be when we were in school. I know if you're anything like me, you graduate, you're like, I'm going to work in outpatient orthopedics because all those patients are so motivated. And then you start working, you're like, oh shit, like they're actually really not. I have to help them with their motivation. And we're going to be talking about how you actually do this because it's not words, it's not excitement. It's not to get them all hyped up. But everybody has the same concerns that we do, which is money and time. Meaning, how much am I going to be spending to get myself better? And how long is this going to take? And that's just the reality. And I know a lot of you probably, yeah, I know that. But that is the reality that we have to understand. But if you don't change then how you frame conversations, how you talk to patients, what you do in subsequent sessions, your retention is not going to be great, and you're going to be spending thousands of dollars more on marketing than is really necessary. And when you look at the process of, getting a patient to come in to the clinic, maybe they found an ad, or maybe they Googled chiropractor near me, or physical therapy near me, or, sciatica. All right, and you pop up. That's the journey. That's where the journey starts, right? How easy is it or hard for them to come into the clinic? And I've talked about this. I'm not going to go into a lot of this, but I talked about this on our patient experience playbook a few episodes about 3 or 4 weeks ago. How hard is it for them to even find you, then to come in, to call you, to make an appointment, to fill out the paperwork, right? So that stuff setting the standard and kind of creating the template. Tells the patient, all right, is this going to be a pain in the ass? Do they have great customer service? And I know some of you might say, well, customer service doesn't have a place in healthcare. It does. And that's actually part of patient retention. So when we look at it, the journey, right? We go from internet search, or, maybe they met you at an event. Either way, starts with marketing. And then the patient schedules. Maybe they call you. Maybe it's something online. Maybe you have ZocDoc or something like that. They come in. What kind of preparation did you do for the evaluation? That's first and foremost. The old, oh, what are you here for? Pardon my language, fucking read the notes. Like, what are you here for? I know it's so common for us just to ask that. So what brings you in today? My leg is killing me, and I can't walk, I can't sleep. Didn't you look at the chart? That's essentially what you're telling the patient. You didn't even look at the chart. So make sure your preparation for that new visit is on point. And then patient comes in a few visits, so you think we're good, right? And I mentioned a lot of people, especially if they're paying out of pocket, they're going to assess, all right, I'm giving you a few visits here, but if I'm not better by visit 3 or 4 in some meaningful way, I'm not coming back in because it's expensive. And this is, I know, all right, well, $20 copay. Those of you who know. Patients, there are patients who will easily complain about paying a $20 copay. I don't know their financial situation. Frankly, it doesn't matter because it's people who are insanely wealthy, and they'll complain about paying a $20 copay. You don't know somebody's financial situation. But they're grading you every visit. And this is the first major mistake a lot of clinicians make, which is they do a bang-up eval, and then they think, I influenced the patient, right? Or somebody might say, I convinced them. I hate that word. I convinced them to come in. No, you didn't. You either influenced them or you educated them. So stop using that vernacular. But then you think you automatically built in the trust. And I want you to just think about how silly that is. It's like, it would be as if you went on a date and it was a great first date, and then you just automatically assumed, I'll earn that person's trust. What? No, you did not obviously earn anybody's trust. You might have gained something positive there, but you have to work on it as you go along. So we get to visit 4. You haven't gotten the patient better. You haven't really communicated that well. You haven't told them what's coming up next. You didn't outline, hey, if this doesn't work, this is what we're going to do. And if that doesn't work, this is what we're going to do. So visit 4 comes, they're not any better, they blow you off. Now, I don't know what your follow-up process is like. For some of you, maybe it's non-existent. Maybe you're using a software. Maybe some of you actually get on the phone and call the patient, which I know is a rarity, but you want to look at what's the best approach to get this patient back on the schedule. Now, if you're having that conversation for the first time, if they even pick up the phone, you're way too late. So for those of you, and the majority of people just say, well, they're gone. They're not coming back in. Maybe you leave one message and maybe it's the front desk that does it. Or maybe you have a call center. Hey, Dan, we see that you missed your appointment. Like to get you back on the schedule. Now, maybe some of you have a strict policy, you cancel once, or maybe a no call, no show once, and you boot them off the schedule. Whatever your system is. Does the patient really know that they're even being missed? Right? They go 2 weeks and it's nobody's even called me to ask me why I stopped coming in. Clearly, I wasn't that important. So these little things that you do or don't do, it tells patients a lot about you, right? So then you lose these patients, and then ideally when you sit down and you look at some reports, maybe it's weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. Hey, we lost, we're losing maybe 10 patients a month within their first 5 visits or 4 visits. All right, let's go spend a little bit more on marketing. Or maybe you then go to marketing team and saying, you know what, you're not getting me enough new patients. This is the cycle that a lot of you go through, and I've seen it myself. We have to get better as leaders, and I don't care if you're a director, owner, executive, CEO, whatever. You have to get better at understanding root causes, which is if I have to continuously get a lot of new patients or spend more on marketing, I need to start asking myself, why is that? Right? Because most people's behaviors haven't changed. It's just something else around them is changing. So if I'm continuously having to spend more, and maybe last month or maybe the last year I was spending $5,000 a month on marketing, and now I have to spend $7,000 a month. Before you spend it, just ask yourself the question, why is it that I have to spend more money to get the same amount of patients or to get more patients? Right? And this is where when we look at the aspect of marketing, and I mentioned it, you have to really, we talk about being productive in healthcare. How do I be as efficient as I possibly can? But then you're taking money that you earned, and we all know the challenges with earning money in healthcare these days. Lord knows reimbursements are not going up, and insurance companies are not helping you guys out. So whatever money you're making, the idea should be, how do I keep it and maximize it? It shouldn't be, how do I keep it and then spend more of it? But when you have this aspect of creating efficiencies, the same thing goes for your marketing team. And I mentioned at the beginning, I always thanked my marketing team. Honestly, I didn't have to go out there. I didn't have to take my time away. And this is one of the biggest complaints about people in healthcare, the time that we don't spend with patients. And some of you have providers and clinicians. Some of you don't like that word providers, clinicians, doctors, spending time maybe doing marketing that's taking away from the time they could be spending either treating a patient or, here's a big one, training other staff members. And maybe you say, well, Dan, I don't have my clinicians doing it. I have my practice manager. Okay, so what is your practice manager now not doing because they're spending the time out of the office? So there's always a trade-off. You're either spending money to save time, or you're saving money and spending time. There's no perfect world where I could do both. I could save a lot of money and save a lot of time. Oh, wait, there is. It's actually called working on your patient retention. Now, I didn't also mention this, but when we think about the patients who are compliant, and if you're really focused on how do I keep them engaged throughout the treatment, I really want you guys to think first and foremost, why do they stop coming in? Now, most of us have been to a doctor. What are the experiences like for you? Right? The ones that stand out as being really good. What happened that you walked out of here saying that was a phenomenal visit? Or if you've ever gone to, physical therapy, acupuncture, seen a chiropractor, something that you had to do maybe a little bit of a prolonged period of time, what kept you going? Some of you might say, I was just determined and motivated. I'm a self-motivator. That might be true, but I guarantee you if the treatment plan was stagnant, your ass would not be going there. So you have to think about the scenarios that you actually left with a real positive impression. What happened? Because it's really easy just to focus on the bad experiences, right? Like how often do you go out, you got to dinner, and it's just, oh my God, the service sucked, or it took us forever to get seated, Took forever, the server took forever to get back to us. It was expensive, especially nowadays, freaking everything's expensive. It was overpriced. And then you actually have a good experience, but you don't remember anything about it. And maybe you still actually focused on something negative. Like, oh, well, we waited 15 minutes. Instead of everything else was phenomenal. The food was great. So we don't always really focus on the positive experiences. We tend to focus on the negative ones. So for the negative experiences, what happened there? And for the positive experiences that you've had, going to see a doctor or different type of clinician, what made it positive? What about it? Were they efficient? Did they get you in quick? Did they communicate the treatment plan effectively? Did they greet you with a good, warm personality? So these things matter. You can learn from other people. And when we look at what keeps a patient from coming in, this is really what's important for you guys to understand, is that, number one, if you could evaluate your own experiences. And this is, a hard skill to master. For a lot of people who practice in healthcare, is empathy. It's, how do I relate to the person who's sitting in front of me? So think about that. How do you relate to the patient? If you could think like them, how much better could you serve and treat them? Right? So if you said, well, these are all the reasons that I would stop going to see a chiropractor or a physical therapist, are you that much different than everybody else? Right? Do you think that your experience is similar to a patient's experience? So when we think about that first visit, and maybe you said, Dan, I do a phenomenal evaluation. It's amazing. All right. Coming out of that visit, do patients have expectations? Like, this is what's going to happen. And if this is what our treatment plan is going to be like. And if it doesn't, if it doesn't work, this is option B. And if option B doesn't work, this is option C. Now, I know some of you might say, that's ridiculous. Why would I ever do that? Because how often does that actually happen? How often does the first initial treatment plan fully, fix or help the patient? How many of you actually have to adjust your treatment plan? Guarantee it's a lot of you. And that's one aspect. Patients don't even know what the hell is going to happen. All right, what's going to happen in a few weeks? What should I expect? Even, oh my God, man. I was talking to my wife recently about something related to, oh gosh, what the hell was she discussing? It was something about not having, we were talking about pregnancy. That's what it is. Now, she's not pregnant, but we have a friend. I mean, we've had a few of her friends, obviously. We're at that age now. Her girlfriends are getting pregnant. And some of them have had really rough experiences. And what they've experienced was never even discussed. And she's actually getting frustrated. She's like, why wouldn't you tell the patient that this might happen? Right? And I don't want to scare them. You're not going to scare them if you know how to actually communicate properly. At the end of the day, that'd be like me saying to a patient, hey, 100% guarantee you're going to get better. How the hell can I guarantee that to every single patient? Mrs. Jones, you got a probably 80% chance of getting better if we do this, this, and this, and if you do this, this, and this, right? Because the expectations isn't just about what we're going to do part of the treatment. Also has to be, this is what's going to happen. This is what I need you to do, right? How many of you out there want to recommend dietary changes, ergonomics, right? Get rid of that crappy chair, get a new one. Work on your workstation setup, stand more. Stop eating processed foods. If I'm giving you a home exercise program, I need you to do it. So the expectations, too, isn't just, here's what everything I'm going to be doing to get you better. Here's what you need to do on your own. And I would tell patients that exactly. I'd say, if you do all this, you got about a 95% chance getting better. You don't want to change your diet, goes down to 85%. Don't want to do any of the exercises, goes down to 75%. Don't want to change how you sleep, goes down to 6%. You got to be honest with them. Because guess what happens? If they don't get better, who are they blaming? Sure as shit, not themselves. They're blaming you. And then they're out there saying physical therapy or chiropractor didn't work for me. No, you didn't give it the chance. Just like how many people go to the gym, like, yeah, the gym doesn't work. And I mean, while that's that person sitting on a bike, pedaling 5 miles an hour, reading a book. You didn't give it any effort. But then you're blaming something else for the lack of progress. And I can tell you right now, as one thing I damn well did not want to happen. I did not want people walking around the community where I was practicing saying, yeah, I tried this clinic and I got physical therapy there and it didn't help me. Or I got chiropractic care and it didn't help me. That's bull crap. I want them, if I didn't get them better, I at least want the patient to say, you know what? That guy tried everything he could. He did everything. He was honest with me. He changed treatment plan, different exercises, different treatments, referred me to somebody else. multiple changes, and I just didn't get better. Because then it opens up the ability, then again, I didn't do what I need to do. Or maybe they were consistent too, and unfortunately, there's just patience, and we know this is one of the hard parts of healthcare. You can't get everybody better. But the expectations laid out. And then what happens if they don't actually get better? Or maybe, hey, I'm improving. Okay, now I'm not improving. And now I'm not improving for multiple visits. So a lack of progress, which then also creates maybe a lack of confidence, right? Or maybe the lack of confidence is actually from you. Do you seem like you know what you're doing? I can't tell you how many clinicians that I would watch. I'm a big fan of just observation, right? Especially when we're training and teaching and mentoring of the clinicians. Like, I don't know why they're struggling. Okay, are you actually watching them or listening to them? And I know some of you might say, "Ooh, it's kind of like an invasion." How do you know what they're saying or doing or sounding, right? So if you have somebody who's evaluating a patient, and yeah, Mrs. Jones, so what I think will really help you. What? I hate to use this word. They sound weak, and that's why you can get somebody who sounds super confident. It might not know what the hell they're talking about. Patients will believe that person over the genius who sounds weak and inefficient. Right? They don't even believe in their own treatment plan, so why the hell should the patient? Those things build confidence. And then we talked about accountability. I mentioned that with the initial evaluation expectations. If the patient cancels, do you follow up with them? Do you check in with them? Do you say anything next time they come in? And I used to love it when a physical therapist, chiropractor would say to me, "Well, it's only one visit. One visit turns into two. Two visits turns into three. And then you're having the conversation, and it's too late." Here's the crux of it. If you don't talk about it right away, it's not important to the patient. It tells the patient it's not important to them. It tells them it's not important to you. It'd be similar to how many of you, when you get an overweight patient, how many of you actually talk to the patient about their weight, especially if they're coming in for something and their issue is directly related to their weight, right? That person's coming in for knee pain. It's like, I don't know why my knee is killing me. And they're 5'4" and they weigh 300 pounds. And then you're trying to navigate this conversation. Are you shitting me? You don't, okay, I'm going to be a jerk about it. But at the end of the day, hey, Mrs. Smith, for somebody, your height, I could pull up, here's the numbers. The average weight is about 140 pounds max. So right now, unfortunately, you're about 160 pounds overweight. And this is how much force it's putting on your knee. It's not like, call it is. You're not going in and say, "Hey, Mrs. Smith, are you stupid? You're fat. You're morbidly obese. What are you talking about?" But this is what's going on. So this is, again, how much we can get you better. But to get you as much better as you'd like, this is what's going to happen on your end. So that's one aspect. But when you don't, and my point there is that having that conversation initially tells the patient how very important that issue actually is, versus what I've heard from a lot of people. Well, I just talked to them about that on, visit 3 or 4 after they trust me a little bit. Okay, what if there is no visit 3 or 4? What if that patient has seen a multitude of doctors and clinicians and nobody has said anything? And then you're going to just add to the list of people who never addressed the primary issue. And then, yeah, we're talking about, in that scenario, pain, but what if the patient ends up having a heart attack and dies? Not out of the realm for somebody who's 5'4", 300 pounds. Are you comfortable with that? If you come across that person's obituary in your local newspaper, like, "Oh shit, Mrs. Smith died." Now, you might not say why, but I guarantee your brain's thinking, "Gee, I wonder if it's because she was overweight. Maybe she had a heart attack or a stroke, or he." This is my point. When we're talking about outcomes, it's not just, well, like, are you really vested in helping the patient get better? Now, when we talk about retention, it's not just up to you. So, I know I'm being very passionate here because this is really important to me, just as well as it should be important to you. But I want you to understand, too, it's not just a solo issue. It's not just, All right, it's me. It's a team effort, right? We talked about um, the aspect of, all right, what about your call center? What happens when the patient first calls in? How does that person contribute? How does the marketing gets patients. But then what about speaking to your call center? Or maybe your call center is your front desk. Are they providing some confidence for the patient? Hey, you're coming to a place that can help you. We're going to do everything we can. Or is it just, all right, thanks, Mr. Smith. Thanks for calling us. What's your insurance? Oh, yeah, by the way, what are you coming in for? What? So what's the initial conversation like? And then, if you have a support team, maybe massage therapists, athletic trainers, exercise physiologists, whatever it may be, PAs, whoever you have helping yourself, treat the patient. How are they reinforcing it? And I can tell you right now, I've heard from numerous patients where they go to the doctor's office and the feedback that I get, which is very consistent, I love my doctor, but I hate the front desk. So how's the front desk contributing to the patient retention? Right? It's like, I love seeing the doctor, but damn, I hate the check-in and check-out process. Just person's miserable. They're just giving me bad vibes. It happens. That adds up. So when we're talking about even the cancellation follow-up, if it's not you as the clinician doing the follow-up process, what does it sound like coming from somebody potentially at the front desk? And if it's you say, no, I do it. All right, what's your communication sound like? So when we talk about this huge aspect of patient retention, it's also not just, all right, we did a great job at the beginning, but what's happening throughout? Is the communication great? Does it stay great, right? Again, any normal human relationship, the ones that thrive, they work on their communication. They don't start off like on fire, like a lot of us do in romantic relationships. Oh, I used to get her flowers and do this and that. And then a year later, it's, I don't do any of that anymore. Or I got married, so now I don't have to do it. No. How are you actually nurturing and, more importantly, growing the relationship? And it's the same thing with patients. Is your communication the same? It was insanely high level on day 1. Is it insanely high level on day 10? Right, so what does that look like? We talked about their lack of progress. Communication comes into that too. Patient cancels. Hey, Dan, what happened last visit? You didn't show up and you didn't call us. Oh, shit. That tells them you're paying attention. Right? And I remember I had a patient a long time ago. He wasn't even my patient. The guy came in 20 minutes late every single time. That's a pain in the ass because it disrupts your whole flow. If you're looking at your schedule, you're like, all right, Dan comes in at 11, Bob's coming in, and the clinic I was at, we were very flexible because we had a big support staff. So we can manage those kind of things. But for me, just call me. Just let me know. So he would show up late every single time. And then one day I called him out. I was like, yeah, unlike you coming in 20 minutes late every day. And he's like, you're keeping track of that? It's like, damn right. Because it's important. People don't see what their actions do to other people. But they also don't see what their actions do to themselves. So if they're not showing up, again, how are they getting better? Is it important to you? You have to talk to them. Because again, you let one visit go. Now you just said it's okay. And then ultimately, for those patients that drop off towards the end, I want you to just start asking yourself, why? Are we getting complacent? Are we not updating their plan of care? I mean, I can't tell you how many people they give a home exercise program day 1 and they don't give another one until the patient's discharged. What the hell is that shit? So for 8 weeks, you've had the patient do quad sets? So are you progressing? Are you changing things up? This is what's going to keep a patient compliant. And then do you actually think about, the end? Right? I know we're wonderful at, all right, what's the goal that you want to achieve? Okay, well, if the patient achieved the goal, then why are they coming in still? Right? And what do you want to do? I want to be able to go up and down my steps pain-free. Okay, they can do that now. Well, now I want you to come in for 2 more weeks to work on a little bit more strength. Makes sense? Great. But if it doesn't make sense, I mean, guys, just, focus on what their goals were, but then also, what is the end game here? So if you're not asking that question, you damn well better believe the patient is. Now, some things I really want you to focus on too. We talked a lot about why patients stop coming back in, what you should be looking for. And again, I also want you to really focus on too is just signs of that disengagement, right? If they're maybe starting to come in late, or you had somebody who's insanely compliant, now they're missing a few visits. Those are telltale signs. I want you to really pay attention to these things because you can nip a lot of this in the bud. If you're able to see, I think this patient's getting a little antsy, or maybe they just don't want to spend any more time or more money, or they don't think they're getting any better, you need to have that conversation before they just blow you off, because the reality is that most patients, they're not going to just tell you, hey, Dan, I'm not coming in anymore. I always respect those patients, but it's minimal. It's probably about 10-15% of those patients who would actually say, hey, today's going to be my last visit. Everybody else, just blow me off. So I have to learn the hard way. So I want you to not have to learn the hard way too. But I want you to also start looking at some numbers. That plan of care completion rate. So I said the average, at least in PT, and it hasn't changed much, was 70%. What's yours? Out of all your new patients come in, how many of them actually complete the full plan of care? If it's 10 visits, 5 visits, whatever it is, how many of them go through that whole thing? How many of them self-discharge? What is your overall retention? And when we look at these things overall, number one, it tells you how well are we doing as a clinic, how well is the team doing as a whole. And if you're a solo practitioner, all right, how am I doing here? But then it's the other aspect too, though, and more, I'll get back to that in a second. But the other aspect too, from the business side of it, is if you don't know those numbers, how can you really accurately budget your marketing, right? Because then what happens too is you should also be able to track not just those numbers, but what's the long-term value of a patient, meaning, all right, how much revenue does each patient actually bring into the clinic? How much does it cost us to bring a new patient into the clinic? Those numbers significantly matter. Because again, to run a successful business, which again, if you're in healthcare, you're still running a business, you need to know the numbers that are going to help you set your budget. So if you can't set a budget, how can you run the business as best as possible? I want you to really, as we're wrapping up, I really just want you to focus on one significant thing here, which is you're spending the money or the time to bring patients in to your practice. But if you're not focused on keeping them, how does this actually go back to, the reason that you went to school was to ideally get patients better. I don't think most of you went to school so you can say, I just want to make money, because Lord knows if you're if you're a PT or an OT, you're not making hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you went there for a reason. So if you're not looking at how do I honor the marketing team, whether it's internal or external, how am I honoring their effort to bring me a patient, and how do I honor why I went to school? So if you're burned out and you're stressed and you're tired, I get it. Been there. I'm sure most of you will experience that at some point in your life. You have to go back to your why. And I'm not using that as a reason to overtreat. I know that's prevalent with some institutions where they want to guilt trip you into just working more and more and more. And then, but you went to school. It's not about that. But it is a matter of taking patient care very serious. And I know most of you do it. And for those of you that are, maybe owning a clinic, most of your providers probably do it too. But it is very easy to kind of slip away from that message time to time. So if you have somebody bringing you patients, number one, thank them and be grateful for them. Number two, do everything you can and start really asking yourself, am I doing everything that I can to help patients? Or am I just saying I'm doing everything that I can to help patients out? Now, in order to maximize this episode, I'm also going to have patient retention health check. It's going to be a document that you can download. It's going to give you the ability to really run through your own practice to identify, are we actually maximizing our marketing? Are we doing everything we possibly can to keep our patient retention at a very high level? So it's going to be in the show notes. I want you guys to definitely, download it, take some time, and actually fill this out. This is a huge, huge part of your practice. And if you're, you're too much in the business, I don't have time, this is why you don't have time. You have to take some time, reflect what's working, keep doing that, What's not working? And then can we figure out some solutions? And honestly, if you go through this, or if you already know, I already know my patient retention's not good. Find out the metrics. What are they? And if you can't figure out, I don't know why that it's not great. It's just always been an ongoing issue. Every show we put in, free discovery call for you guys. Utilize it. I'm not just sitting here, giving you actionable tips and advice for the hell of it. It's to actually help you guys improve. So if you can't do it yourself, no shame. Don't feel like bad. Like, oh, I should be able to figure it out because I own the place. You can't see everything, and you damn well can't know everything. All of us. I have a coach. Antonio has a coach. We all need some outside assistance time to time. The resource is there for you guys. You have to utilize it. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. I'll see you guys next time.